Why, hello there. I'm MapleDungeons, and today I'm going to be going over a ranger build. This build is quite defensive, with some good sustained condition damage. So what it's really good for is 1v1ing opponents. It's just good sustained damage, so you can use that in a team fight if you want. But it is really good for holding a point if you need that, and good for just general usage. It's kind of a hybrid kind of build. And they got a lot of the theory crafting kind of thing for this build from the Guild Wars 2 Guru forums. Some guys were posting on there, and I used basically what they were saying and just made a couple modifications, but this is basically comes from there, so I'm going to post credit to that in the description below. Now let's get started with the weapons I'm using, which is the sword and torch. The sword is really good for the evades, the leaps here, but it's also good for the poison that comes on this and the cripple that comes on this move. And then we have the torch, which can be thrown like so, just to put some burning on the opponent, good condition damage, and then more condition damage like so, and it will also do a field which you can trigger off of for more burning. And then, as you just saw, our second weapon is the short bow, which is just pure good damage as well as condition damage. So we have the bleeds if you hit him from behind, we have some poison here, we have more bleeding and cripple, and then we have a little leap here and a stun. So it is all quite good. In terms of our utility abilities, I am using the Healing Spring because it's so good and it's kind of really important for this build. As to why, I'll get to that later. The Protect Me is just good defense. It will make you start uncapping a point, so you want to time it right and only use it in desperation. But it is extremely useful, and we have the Shout Mastery to make its cooldown go down, so it's a good skill. And then we have Sikkim, which is just good damage, and Quickening Zephyr is something you could use in this place instead, but because we are going to have the 20% Shout Mastery down, we are probably going to use this because we're focusing more on the sustain damage, and this is a 15-second lasting thing, while the Quickening Zephyr is only 4 seconds. And then finally, we're just using this as a Sunbreaker, as well as good condition removal every 10 seconds. So that is the crux of the build, and then the Entangle is what we're using for our light skill. And this is debatable because if you're going for any kind of damage at all, you kind of want to be running Rampage as 1. It's really useful. It's really good. So you want to switch this out if you're doing anything other than holding a point, but if you're holding a point, the roots can be so good for the defense and for kiting, so I would recommend going for roots in that situation and that situation only. As for runes and such, I am using 6 runes of Duana. Now, this gives us extra healing just for pure survivability, and then the 6th skill on runes of Duana makes it so whenever we use a healing skill, we and all nearby allies will gain regeneration for 5 seconds. Now this will actually tick off both the original heal and a tick of this original heal, so we'll be able to get a couple ticks of this regeneration off on us, and it will keep the uptime quite nicely, and then our regeneration will be boosted by 20% by the runes themselves, and then another 20%, no, another 33% in the traits. So our regeneration uptime will be pretty high. You'll have it almost all the time, and that will be pretty great for you. Now, if we look at the runes on our weapons, or the sigils on our weapons, I'm using might stacking sigils on both the sword and the bow, so whenever you switch to the weapon, you gain 3 stacks of might. It's just good for pure damage, pure condition damage, as well as power damage. And if you wanted to switch to something else for pure defensive situations, then I would not blame you. I'm just using this right now for that extra damage. And then on the torch, I'm just using energy sigil for the 50% endurance whenever I'm swapping to the weapon. So whenever I swap to the weapon in combat, swap to the sword torch, I will gain a full dodge, which is extremely useful because I can actually switch to that and then basically get a dodge out of this move and a second dodge. So it will be quite good defensively. Now, as for the amulet, I'm just running pure Shaman's Amulet with Shaman's Jewel. It's good for the toughness, the healing power, and the condition damage. So the toughness just puts us in a good situation and keeps our health low, so the healing power can be really effective in terms of effective healing. And then we have the condition damage just to increase that. So it's really the perfect amulet for our situation. And then we have the traits. The traits are going to be 0, 0, 30, 10, and 30. Now, with Vigorous Renewal, we gain Vigor whenever we use a heal skill, which is why this Healing Spring is so effective, because this will actually trigger on every single tick of the fountain, and will give us a ton of Vigor, and make us be able to dodge a lot. And dodging is always good defensively. If you don't have to take damage at all, then it is perfect. And then we have the 5 seconds of regeneration whenever we suffer from bleeding, poison, or burning. As these are the 3 main damage conditions, chances are these 3 things will happen quite a bit. So every 20 seconds around, you'll gain extra regeneration, kind of completing the cycle of all the regeneration you'll be getting on yourself. And then we have Empathetic Bond, which will put pets taking conditions from you periodically. You could switch this out for something else if you really think that you're going to be going against something that isn't condition heavy. But for most situations, I would stick with the Empathetic Bond. We have 10 points in Nature Magic, which gives us the Nature's Bounty, making regeneration apply 33% longer. And then the passive here, you notice, will also give us extra regen whenever our health reaches 75%. In Beast Mastery, we have 30 points, where we're going to spec into Mighty Swap, just extra might for our pets, because our pets are doing the damage, a lot of the damage in this build. We are doing the Shoutmaster for our 2 shouts that we're using, and then we have Natural Healing, which, unlike what this says here, I have been told that it will both regenerate you and your pet. So it is good for your survivability as well as your pets. With the traits done, only one thing left, which is unique to the Ranger, and that is the pets. The pets can really be a lot of things here. What I've chosen is, because I'm going defensive here, I want some defensive abilities. First, I have the Raven here. I believe it's Raven. Yes, it is the Raven, which can blind opponents. So that's just a good defensive move. And then I have the Spider, which gives a nice little stun, which is good for some locking down for damaging, or for just kiting someone around. So those 2 defensive pets will do good while still doing some damage for me. And that, I believe, is the build. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I'm MapleDungeons. For more builds and guides and different gaming coverage, you can subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.